Stormy, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
How are you this evening?
I'll wash my dishes. Go ahead and chat. I'll be back.
Right.
I'm doing very well. I would like to emphasize on the bluegrass roots groups that we have in our country. I belong to one. They're very informative. I'm glad I started going to them because I live outside city limits out in a country. And they provide us with all the numbers, state representatives, the governor, county seats, everything. And I have learned so much by going. And they even invite people that are running for office in the counties now to speak in front of this group.
Okay.
You learn so much. And I think a lot of people need to understand if they could get involved in this we're a little community. We have an elementary school in our community. And then when they get to high school age, they get to choose between one county or the other county to go to high school. And people need to get more involved in these little communities and understand how things work on the county level, the school levels, your city police departments, your county sheriff's departments, and how the prosecuting attorney and the courts work. Start small and grow and expand and do your research. It helps a lot.
Yeah,
I learned a lot.
Do you have any groups you'd like to shout out for people that they could find on the internet or anything?
There is several bluegrass roots communities. I live in Southwest Missouri. That's part of the grassroots community I'm involved with. We meet at a VFW, place we have them once a month. And I am very, very proud to be part of that group. I have learned so much. It gives you a chance to sit back, and when they're done speaking, you can ask questions. If you want to, you can write the questions down, while somebody else is talking, get ready to raise your hand and ask questions. But I find that these groups, they're not only Democrats and Republicans, they're independents, conservatives, whatever you want. The whole community gets involved, and that way you can form your own opinion on how you're going to vote when the elections come up. And that's very important for people to be informed so they can make their decisions on how their community is going to be operated within the county.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sounds amazing. I think that there's a lot of folks right now who are they want to learn and they want to be connected. You kind of hit on this a second ago, but some folks aren't you're not even sure where to start. Like how do you get involved? What are the right questions to ask? Who do you even ask them to,
There are no wrong questions when you're learning. I mean, let's take, for example, the homelessness, the elderly, the mentally unstable that gets pulled into our sheriff's department jails, because when they pull a mentally unstable person into the county jail, they have nowhere to put them but in a padded cell because they have no mental institution backing them up so they can transport them out to a mental facility to where they can get them treated. Where's our funding going in our state that should be helping these kind of people? Our elderly are living from paycheck to paycheck. They're having to choose between their food and their meds, or going to the doctor or the eye doctor, or how they're going to spend their last dime.
Yep.
We need to be more of how do I put this? We need to be the community that thrives on learning and helping one another to build it better. And it starts one person at a time.
I agree. It's funny. My Volpe is my family name. It's Italian, and our sort of motto, our family motto, has always been "Knowledge is no weight to carry." And my grandma used to say that all the time. She was from Australia, excuse me, and just the idea that learning is never harmful, even if it's learning something that is uncomfortable for you. At the end of the day, it always puts you in a better place. And I agree. I think there's been kind of a real attack on just the process of learning and wanting to learn. And
Well,
hopefully,
our generation, my generation, grew up in the schools where we said the Pledge of Allegiance, where we had a Sunday school teacher come in once a month, where there were free lunches. Our parents didn't talk about financial problems in front of us. They didn't fight in front of us. We knew nothing about the money matters. We were the kids that were the latch key kids. You know, we come home from school, let ourselves in, did our chores, done our homework, and waited on mom and dad to come in.
hmm
You know, we drank from the garden hose. We were out during the summer at daylight, you know, come home before dark type people, you know.
yeah,
And I think a lot of our country has forgotten how to be self-reliant, you know, and learn how to fend for ourselves, grow a garden, get out in nature, pick the berries, plant that seed, you know, or whatever, you know.
yeah.
Um,
Can I
we
add a little
sh-
bit to that?
you bet.
So, because I always find this interesting, because I think you are correct in a lot of ways where we've sort of lost touch with some of the fundamentals. And I don't know how it is in Missouri, but here in Columbus, I've seen a lot of community gardens have popped up. I've seen a lot of like sewing classes and things. So I think people are kind of wanting to reconnect to that. But one of the things I do remind folks who maybe don't have children, but are like younger children, that even though that is true, and I think it is important, it's also important to remember that the pressures and expectations on young people right now are so astronomical. So even though like young people, for example, might not be learning some of the skills that you're mentioning, they're also, if you just look at the stats, I remember starting so I'm a first year millennial, starting at millennials down to Gen Z and now Gen Alpha, they have higher rates of high school graduation rates than boomer generation and olders did, higher rates of college graduation rates, higher rates of military service. They have higher rates of volunteerism, higher rates of extracurricular activities while they are going to school. So most younger folks, they have a job, they're participating in sports or music, and they're doing some kind of volunteer activity while they're at school. So one of the things that I think we really should have a conversation about is if we want them to be learning these skills, in things like, you know, civics and home economics and whatnot, we also have to remove the pressures that eat up all of their time and let them be able to participate in these things and experience these things. So I think it's kind of like a yes and scenario for what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, we had Votech, we had home economics, we had first aid, we had health, wood shop, you know, stuff like that. And I don't hear of that anymore. I mean, for crying out loud, they took out cursive writing in school, you know, and the old math, the way we used to work the old math. And if I come across a situation with my daughter when she was in school, I taught her, you know, she didn't understand the math she brought home for homework. I showed her the way I was taught. She took it back to school. She had every one of the answers right, but she put an F on her paper because she didn't do it the new math style.
Yeah. Can I
That's
push
very
back on you a little bit
disappointing.
though?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Just for fun. So 'cause I've always found this interesting. So Common Core math is, I think, what you're talking about.
Yes.
And what's interesting is like I remember the first time I saw Common Core, maybe 15 years ago or whatever, and I was
Mm-hmm.
legitimately confused because I wasn't sure what people were even talking about, because that's how I've always done math in my head, is the
Mm-hmm.
Common Core way. But I was never trained that way. I just knew how to do it. So one of the things I want people to be careful about is just because something is new doesn't mean that it's worse.
That's
And
right.
the thing with that Common Core does, because I think a lot of folks that are just, I don't know, did you say it was your granddaughter that
It was my daughter.
your daughter? So I don't know how old your daughter was at the time. But I know I've seen this with a lot of adults because I'm also a teacher. I'm not a math teacher, but I'm in academics, where I think a lot of parents have this initial like touch this hot stove reaction to Common Core because they're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. It does. Common Core becomes significantly more powerful as you get further into math, because probably I would venture a guess, probably because I did this too back in your schooling days. Probably a lot of the original like multiplications and divisions you probably just memorized, right?
Well,
Like the
to a
multiplication
point,
tables
yes.
and stuff.
Yes, but then when you jumped out of that and you got in the eighth grade, you take basic math and then you jump into algebra one to geometry, which was always something that I really enjoyed because it wasn't going over basic math.
Yeah,
Because something new entices my brain and it's a challenge.
totally. And
And
geometry is just kind of fun because it deals with
yeah,
shapes and things. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Common Core is about teaching. And again, it sounds like I'm defending Common Core. I don't really care. Whatever math works for you, like, is fine by me. But the thing that Common Core is trying to teach a system that can be used regardless of any number or math level. And so once you kind of get that in your head, but it doesn't, I can see the frustration where you're like, well, I got the answer right, but really what they're trying to do is teach her the system. The answer is almost not as important. But I also think that a lot of education right now, I'm seeing this in every industry, but a lot of folks in education, everyone's just so burnt out. The teachers are so burnt out. The administrators are so burnt out that they're just trying to teach to hit the curriculum so that they can make sure that their students have a base level of preparedness for testing and things like that. So I'm also kind of a bigger proponent of removing a lot of the kind of testing system that we have, because I think there's better ways than just teaching to the test. But everybody's so burnt out right now, and the funding is so challenging that it's hard to implement solutions, and it's hard to have a real conversation with parents when you're just rushing from one thing to the next.
well,
Can I?
I see a lot of the parents now that are saying, why don't we teach them the way we were taught? And that way they can grasp a better understanding of the world today. Some of these kids that are out of high school can't even count change back. They don't know how to make change
Oh, I
unless they got a computer right in front of them,
yeah,
to tell them
I
what change to get back.
yeah, I'm totally. I think there are some deficiencies. I think home economics and civics. I think the
Yeah.
lack of that is really troubling. I watched a YouTube video for whatever that's worth the other day about people were supposed to order the size of a moon, planet, universe, and galaxy from largest to smallest, and the number of people that couldn't even get close to it was frightening. And so I think that we definitely are missing out on. I guess just to be honest, like we're doing our kids a really big disservice, just in general, because yeah, a lot of those schools are not a lot of the schools, but just a lot of the curriculum is not hitting, I think, some of the fundamentally important parts. Have you been in Missouri all your life?
I was born in Chicago,
Okay.
Illinois. Um, I was moved down into Missouri at the age of 5, and I've lived along the Arkansas-Missouri border most of my life, but 2 years, and I was up in West Virginia with my grandfather. My
Okay.
grandfather was a coal miner, and he run moonshine. And
Oh, that's cool.
and my dad was a race car driver up in Chicago, Illinois. And my mother, she was the breadwinner. I mean, she worked her tail off. She was into electronics, and I had worked for a company that I built government things for, medical, army, military, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all them, cables and things like that. So I have had my hands in many things in life, and I'm, kind of firmly well educated and mechanically inclined, and I take every bit of knowledge I can and try to learn more, because more is better. The more you know, the more you're going to understand, you know.
I agree.
And I like to touch every avenue that I can. I even went as far as to go into our county sheriff's department and took a class to learn what they went through, what their officers go through, what kind of training they do, the paperwork it entails, the prosecuting attorney, the judges, even how the prisoners are treated inside, and how they keep them separated, and how they install, skylights so that would affect them better inside the jail cell, so that if they have a little sunlight, their attitudes change. We are, and I took 8 weeks of this class, and it was like 3 hours a night. And I'm very glad I went and did it, because knowledge is understanding, and more understanding gives you more knowledge to have, or more knowledge to seek more knowledge. I get on the internet and I look things up. I'm one of those that I want to learn. Because if you stay in a rut and you don't want to learn, then you're going to be stuck there. You've got to learn in order to progress.
Is it okay if I chime in on this?
Oh, of course.
Please.
So just give you a bit of my background. 10 years academic teacher. I taught at Arizona State University, Ohio State University. I taught in Japan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia as an ESL instructor. I have a master's in linguistics. And what I found in education when I was teaching, and with what I do in my current role, which is technically a trainer at a corporation, but still, our education system got away from the fundamentals of life in general, kind of like what you guys have been discussing. And when it comes to social studies, what we've gotten away from is civics. That's the biggest problem, wherein lies the issue, where you're going to events right now that talk about how to deal with politics and whatnot, and that's the big key that's missing, because in social studies they don't discuss civics, and there's a big difference there. It's something where I knew about civics, but I'm guaranteeing probably with Chris, civics wasn't there with social studies as you were growing up, because we heard about it, but we didn't get it touched. And I'm 4 years older than you, so I'm guessing that's probably where it landed for you as well. But ultimately, where we have a problem is school became so systemized or so technical. They were only looking to get you to where you needed to be in order to get the quote-unquote good job or get into the good position. But ultimately what they did is they started to flood all of those spots. And now there is no more, hey, would you like to do this? Would you like to do that? Now it's like, no, you either have to be a doctor, an engineer, or an investor or something. And everything got pigeonholed. Once that started to happen, there was no diversity in our education. The arts start to disappear. Music starts to disappear. And now it's just like, if you're not doing STEM, then it's absolutely worthless. But that was our own doing as a society. It's something that we have to accept as a society, to say we messed up, as we're watching these other countries, like in the Nordic regions, in Finland, in Sweden, in Norway, in these countries, we're like, why do they got it so good? And when I talk to the teachers who are over there, they're just like, yeah, we left the American system a long time ago, because we found that the research was showing us to go down this path instead. And so they decided, we're going to follow the research, not what America was doing. And they saw such a massive difference in their outcomes and what's happening with their students. I mean, the concept of homework is absurd in most of these Norwegian or these Northern European countries. They're just like, hey, you don't do homework anymore. We found that it has no value for our students. So to kind of like stop painting in broad strokes here, what I'm trying to say is that we have collectively failed because we got so granular with saying this is the only way from point A to point Z that we lost all of the nuance along the way. We sanitized it to the point where it actually hurt us, and that's where we sit. At least that's my opinion. I'm sorry I've been chomping at the bit because when it comes to education, it's such a large portion of my life. My mom was a teacher at Bowling Green State University. I taught at, actually with this in Ohio, I taught at Ohio Northern. I taught at the University of Findlay. So I even taught at Owens Community College. And education is such an important part, but we failed multiple generations. It's going to take a lot of repair there. And the whole voucher system, I mean, that's its own monster. That's something that is absolutely absurd in my opinion. But anyways, I digress.
Well, where I live, you're either overqualified or underqualified for a job.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you're talking about your blue collar workers. Now, where I live, there's a Tyson's factory. They are very, well known in the country.
Is that the Tyson facility that announced they're doing layoffs?
Nebraska is the one that got shut down.
Nebraska? Okay.
That was Nebraska, yes. Now, Tyson's is, if they pulled that company, do you know how many people would lose their livelihood?
Wait, that's what's happening in Nebraska, though.
3,000
jobs are gone, and that's going to impact more than that in the families.
And do you know how many generations of families have worked at these plants? Generation after generation after generation. Yeah. They depend on this company from paycheck to paycheck, health care, whatever. I have been one of those people. But I got out of it. And I went on to something else. I've worked for the county. I have worked for an electrical, I worked routing, soldering, building cables, building satellites, things like that. So, and then I went into the law field, dabbling in that, because I was interested. We have to expand our horizon or broaden it more to seek the knowledge, to see how this country is being ran. Because if we don't look up and around and have our head on a swivel, so to speak, we're going to be left behind.
I could not agree more. It sounds like, on that note, I think you hit the ball out of the park. I think we're heading into a direction that, again, is going to be a disservice to our children who are not going to be prepared to be competitive in the global marketplace. But also, Xavier, to your point, one of the things I personally believe, and this kind of pains me with all the attacks against colleges, is I just remind people that, one, education is about broadening your horizons, but also college is not a job training program.
No.
Learning the humanities, the arts, the place in the world, it's more than a vocational training. And I'm not speaking ill of vocational training at all, but this idea that everything has to lead to this big profitable job, I think has corrupted our ability to just get people to think about new ideas and bring new solutions to the country.
Can I bring up something very interesting on that?
Okay.
Very
I only have a
interesting
couple
on what
minutes
you
left,
just said.
so go ahead, Xavier.
Okay, I'll make it brief, but when I was working and teaching at Arizona State University, we were run, the department I was a part of, it was called the American English and Cultural Program. While I was there and I first got there, huge program, we had 1,600 students, we had 200 teachers, it was a huge program. Then after my second semester, we had this business person who comes in and takes it over. Don't know how it all happened, but I do know that it was a lot of corruption involved. And this business person comes in, takes it over, and they're like, "We're going to get this over 2,000 students. We have these targets. We're going to hit these goals and these markers, and all of our students, they paid for a degree, and we're going to make sure they get one." I raised my hand at that meeting, and I said, "Excuse me, our students paid for an opportunity to get a degree, and it's our job to help them get to it, but they're not guaranteed one. If they want one, they can go buy one from somebody in India, and they'll pay a fraction of what they're paying here at Arizona State." But what ended up happening was the program plummeted to less than 400 students in just a year and a half. We lost tons of teachers, but the point that I'm bringing up is this. You guys made a comment earlier about how school is not for business training, but business people don't look at it in that sense. And when the business people started infiltrating higher education, they started twisting it and manipulating it into preparing them to go do the jobs wherever they were supposed to work. Literally businesses came in and destroyed higher education. It is no longer the place about expanding our minds and growing ourselves in different ways. So sorry, I had to chime in with that because that is such a huge.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think that's part of the one of the many larger issues. But if we think about, let's just say AI comes in and it builds the utopia that Elon Musk is claiming it will be, and we'll all have all this time to advance ourselves and make, follow our interests and whatnot. But then I also have to think of do we have the skills and knowledge as a people to do that? Because we haven't been trained we haven't been trained how to follow the humanities and to read a book.
That's right.
With media literacy and we haven't been trained to take an interesting philosophy and work backwards from it and use that as a way to guide your life. For I'm just kind of coming up with these different examples, but I have to head off here a little bit. Stormy, thank you so much for joining and talking. Hopefully Missouri is not too bad weather-wise right now.
Oh, we're cold, but we'll rebound in midweek probably.
Okay. Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Here in Columbus has gotten very chilly. Of course, thank you for being on the stream, and you're welcome back anytime.
And your live is very respectful. I love that. People can talk, and they're not yelling, they're not screaming or arguing with one another, and that is very respectful. That's the way the country needs to be.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm glad that you enjoyed the experience.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.